You're listening to The New Paris. I'm your host, Lindsay Tremuta. If you listened to the previous episode with Phineas Ruckert, you learned that the stakes were quite high for France's municipal elections, and particularly for Paris to elect a replacement for Mayor Anne Hidalgo. Well, we are Tuesday, and there is some relief to be shared right now for many Parisians. Voters sent Rachida Dati walking and opted for Emmanuel Grégoire. He was formerly Anne Hidalgo's first deputy. The Socialist Party has governed Paris for 25 years, and the majority has spoken. But that isn't the full picture. To give you a sense of what his win means, how many people really turned up to vote, where the finger-pointing is being aimed now by major political parties, and what Grégoire plans to do for Paris, I asked political journalist and author Léa Chamboncel. She's the founder of Popol Media, which breaks down political news each week, hosts regular events, including the one that I was involved in on U.S. Election Day, where I first met Léa, and looks at the impact of politics on women. We'll have plenty more to say about Grégoire as his term advances, but for now, here's what to know. Léa, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me.
What are you feeling right now? It's been a hectic 2 weeks, a lot of things at stake, but we've just learned last night that Emmanuel Grégoire will be the next mayor of Paris. And I know you and I were saying that we're relieved for a number of reasons, but not everyone is super happy about him being the one to win it all. So before we get there, though, I'm sort of wondering how you perceive his win last night.
All right. So as a political journalist, I perceive it to be like the really useful vote. It's interesting to see how often in French elections, at least, on the first round of the election, people would vote by heart, vote de cœur, we call it. And they will make their favorite choice, considering what they would like the best for their city, their country, or wherever they have to vote for. And first round, vote de cœur. And then second round, we call it vote utile, which is like the useful vote. Mm-hmm. And what's very interesting is that it happens that I ran into a friend of mine that was running for La France Insoumise, which is let's say, it's still Social Democratic Party, but they're considered to be more on the left than the Socialist Party that Emmanuel Grégoire was representing on this election. And surprisingly enough, she was telling me that at the very local level, which is the level of the arrondissement, La France Insoumise made a very good score. She ranked second with 19% on the first round, so it was very impressive. And she was telling me that the situation was that she wasn't sure if Emmanuel Grégoire had a lot of voters left in a way. We call it réserve de vote in French political journalism. And so we can see that actually he managed to get quite a few more voters. And I assume they were the voters from Bournazel, which was the center right candidate that was appointed by the party of Emmanuel Macron, but not Emmanuel Macron. That was actually, running for Dati. Oh my God, it's so hard to follow.
So complicated. I know.
So yeah, I found that the situation quite interesting. And as a Parisian citizen that I was until a month ago, I am absolutely relieved. And I see that since 2001, Paris is a, leftist city, and it looks like it's not going to change. And so that's pretty cool.
It is a relief, and it's a relief given that some of the numbers were quite shocking, I think, after the first weekend. As you said, maybe it was an emotional vote, but I mean, Western Paris is classically blue. And they were...
It's more than that. It's more than that. I mean, 10% for Sarah Knafo, which is horrible far right. That's crazy.
She is further right than the Rassemblement National.
And that's even possible,
Right, if it's even possible. And it's quite scary that she got 10% of the vote and then retracted, took herself out of the election.
Yeah.
And there was, some thought that it was Emmanuel Macron himself who called her to say, you need to step back. Now we're pretty sure that's not what happened. Dati called her and said, you need to step out. She admitted it on France 2 last night, Sarah Knafo. Whether she's telling the truth or not, the point is someone encouraged her to leave the race. And Dati partnered with the guy you said probably ended up losing, or sort of his supporters probably ended up voting for Grégoire, which was not necessarily a given calculus due to the alliance.
No, but it seems that Grégoire's team was actually quite confident on, this strategy. So it worked.
But
after all,
it worked. And as you started to say, there is, not just in Paris, but in other parts of France, there's growing strength of La France Insoumise, perhaps not quite the extent, however, that the center-right won support in these elections all across the country. And I guess I'm wondering if you think there's a sense that the people who couldn't even hold their noses to vote for Grégoire in Paris are these leftist voters who see the socialists as the enemy now.
I think, there is still a few, because you can see that Sophia Chikirou, which was representing the France Insoumise party for the election in Paris, she did well, I mean, considering that her party in 2020, which was the previous election on local level, municipality, they didn't consider running much. They didn't invest in the campaign. They were like, okay, we're not structured, we're not big enough, and we're not going to make it. We're going to be focusing on the presidential and perhaps the legislative. And surprisingly enough, no one expected that France Insoumise will do such, will rank so well. And this is also why the socialists, especially, felt, they feel like it's their election. They've been implanted. That's the biggest outcome of this election. Yesterday, I was with a few journalists, political journalists, commenting, live the results. And what's the biggest outcome is that it's a backlash. It's like a backlash for French politics, because we're going back into this configuration where you have Les Républicains, which is the right, very strong at local level, and Le Parti Socialist, very strong at a local level. And whatever is in between, whatever was new into French politics, which is Renaissance, the party of Emmanuel Macron, did so bad. They have no local implementation. I mean, they did so bad in 2020, and they did so bad yesterday. It's really insane. Even though they were saying, oh, we did so well, but not that well.
Lies. Yeah, they did not do well.
No, not at all. But La France Insoumise actually did very well, considering that, of course, they didn't win big cities, such as Lyon, Paris, or Marseille. At Lyon, they did play a big role, because they did an alliance with Grégory Doucet, which is from the Green Party. And thanks to this alliance, they managed to win the election, which wasn't sure at all for him, sorry. But what they did is that they qualified for so many cities. And even though they maybe didn't make it to the next level, but, they were qualified, because in French municipal elections, to be qualifying for the second round, you need to reach 10% of the voters, basically. And they did that in so many places, and in massive cities like Paris. I mean, that was not expected.
It's huge. And people want an alternative.
Yeah, for sure. They want the alternative. Also, the important thing that we need to look at is that what big traditional parties or new parties, because La France Insoumise is still considered to be a new party considering their history in French politics, they play a key role in big cities and middle cities, sort of. But in 88% of the towns and villages and whatever we call commune, which is the legal, definition or nomination, 88% is rural towns. And where most of these parties don't play any role at all, apart from Socialist Party and Les Républicains. like traditional, grassroots, grounded, like French politicians. And so it's interesting to see that France Insoumise has been building a lot in like suburban and big cities areas, which can lead to something interesting for 2027. It's hard to, make plans on what's going to happen in 2027, looking at this very specific election. But it's an interesting outcome, and I'm surprised that a lot of people don't take it as serious, especially the Socialist Party, considering that they're doing so well. Anyways.
Yes. And actually that leads into one other element in this, which is we know there are still a lot of people who sat the whole thing out. The abstention rate for the runoff yesterday was 41%, which is very high. And among the people who didn't go to the ballot box in Paris were among the least privileged, the poorest. Do you think that any of the candidates, so the three, let's say, Dati, Grégoire, and even Chikirou, before they were eliminated, are realizing what this means? I mean, do they take a moment after these results and say to themselves, people are not motivated to come out?
Yeah, that's an important thing. And as you said, it was 41% in Paris, which was quite, okay, considering the national level, which was like 49%. So it's pretty bad. Yeah. I don't really know if, they have any kind of, it must be. I mean, obviously, when you're elected into a place, you must consider that you can't go without it. But I haven't seen much people from Dati in my neighborhood, for instance.
Right.
I didn't see many people from Grégoire neither down the street. And most people I ran into were essentially people from La France Insoumise. And I know that they have a strategy. And they did that in 2022. They did that in 2024 also for the previous legislative. They have a strategy of going to voters that do not vote. It's really where they're trying to get réserve de voix, to get like they're missing, basically, voters. And I know they're quite out there. It worked actually for other big cities in Île-de-France. It worked for Saint-Denis. It worked for La Courneuve, where they won. It worked in Vaux-en-Velin, where this huge abstention rate in Vaux-en-Velin, which is near Lyon, and they also won this place. It worked in Roubaix, where David Guiraud was elected. Roubaix, which is like a northern city in France, very used to be very communist because of the coal mines and etc. So there's like a tradition of workers and like communist ideology basically that was almost lost to far right, and they actually did well there. So I know that they are very keen on trying to get these people that aren't voting, but it's not that easy, I assume.
So if we think about Paris, and one of the things I said to my guest, or that we talked about in the last episode, who was Phineas Ruckert, who's an American journalist who covers politics from Paris, we talked about how hated Hidalgo has been, and not really by foreigners. The world looks on to her work and her policies and are like, wow. And here she is vilified. And I worry two things. One is Grégoire sort of just setting himself up for a similar response, given that he literally was her deputy for a number of years. And two, is anyone capable of being happy with who's in charge ever? Is this just like, it's a pipe dream?
Yeah, it's a great question. First of all, you need to know that her and Grégoire just hate themselves. Like yesterday, they were
Anne and Emmanuel.
It's like insane. They really, really hate themselves. She didn't want him to be running after her, and she put someone no one forgot. Like, even the political journalist forgot his name. And it was so obvious that it had to be Grégoire.
She had put her support behind in a primary behind another guy, and ultimately didn't work. And so she then had to sort of, again, pinch her nose and pretend she was okay with Grégoire taking over. But yeah, they hate each other. That's so wild.
Yeah, so I don't think he will be walking into her steps because I don't think he agrees. I do assume, but we'll see how it goes. That is a bit more left than her. On the
really, you think? Okay,
let's see how it goes. I hope so, but yeah, I personally, I had I did interview Anne Hidalgo, and it was horrible. Like she was extremely upset by the interview. She left. I mean, she was so pissed off.
Oh my gosh,
it was bad. It was bad. I wasn't on my own. We were a few others on the set, but anyways, it was bad. I don't think
this was how long ago?
That was when she was running for the presidential. She was, she was having the worst time of her life. So I definitely understand, and I didn't take any offense, but yeah, no, she was not doing great at that time. But anyways, even though that bad experience, I don't hate her. I'm like.
You're one of the rare ones.
I know. And I'm like, everyone is just like, oh, Anne Hidalgo, this horrible, this nickname that people give her is like, God, no. And saying that how shitty it is, Paris, and blah, blah, blah. Honestly, as a Parisian, well, I just moved to Brussels, so I need to be honest, but it was a month ago. I found that what she did was good,
Of course.
She did great on a piste cyclable. I ride my bike in Paris, and I appreciate it. There's lots of more green spaces, and in the public policy that she did on environment also had results. The low carbon emission in Paris reduced by 34%. One of the only city in the world that is actually meeting its goals in terms of the Accord Paris. So, I mean, I really don't understand. I don't understand why people hate her. And of course, she's not left enough for me because my heart is a lot more leftist. But I really think that she didn't do that bad, really.
No, I agree. I think people often will find holes in her execution, but they don't actually speak about policy. So even, if I'm talking to some leftist journalists and they hate her too, and they're, pointing fingers at some of the bike lanes that run against traffic, or, oh, this happened in this way that wasn't great. Those are execution issues. Those are not the ideas themselves. And so you actually find people caught in an argument mess of their own making where they can't actually justify
absolutely
all the ways they dislike her. And then, there's the fact that she's so unapologetic. She did not make any excuses or change course at any point. And of course, a woman who does that is, hated.
That makes sense.
But we did, but we did dodge a bullet with another woman. I mean, I know we're talking about how, women are vilified. And I think Dati was vilified for the right reasons. I do wonder, though, so what do you hope that Emmanuel Grégoire will be able to do that maybe Anne couldn't? What does the city need?
Oh, my God. The city needs a very, and actually he did his campaign on that, so I really hope he's going to do it, a very, voluntarist public policy on housing, affordable housing. Honestly, it's worse and worse. And even though, they did pass at the local level some bills to have a threshold on some in some neighborhoods and stuff. I mean, people are struggling to leave and to find a place where to stay, and it's not getting any better. So really, I really hope he's going to work a lot on this. And yesterday, during his victory speech, he had a word for the homeless. So this has to be followed up by a proper, effective policy.
So he made a point of addressing the homeless issue, which I think it is so complex, and I don't know that any single candidate would have solved it overnight. So I hope you're right. He didn't really go into the specifics of the policy, though, right?
No, but he had a word for the homeless. So I hope that having a word after having a word for them, he will, implement some real policy.
I know you mentioned earlier that you don't want to predict too much about next year. And, there are people who think these elections are not actually a preview of the presidentials. But when I saw the way the right, the center right, and then even, the far right in Nice, for example, with Ciotti, when you see the support they got, it makes you wonder what we're in for next year.
I think the biggest impact of these results for next year is on the political party's strategy and narrative. Because, let me explain myself. Yesterday, when you were listening to them, it was insane to see how they were all the winners. Beside Bardella, Rassemblement National, I mean, they weren't very happy. They didn't do that well, to be honest. They didn't qualify in many cities to be at the. They did too well, of course, for me, but they didn't do as well as they thought they would do. And this is similar to last year, the year before, 2024, for the latest legislative. And what I realized, because obviously I listened to all the head of parties in their speeches, and they were all pointing the same enemy. And it's not the far right.
They all
Mélenchon himself,
Yeah.
So what I see is that they are all threatened by La France Insoumise. And this is going to be insane for La France Insoumise, because they realize that they have a real political, leverage with ideas, structured. They work a lot. Whereas, Parti Socialist, I'm not saying that they don't work, but, they were like, oh, we're here, it's fine. They didn't do much considered to what La France Insoumise did or other parties. So that's one thing that I believe that the Parti Socialiste, considering the results of this election, which is quite good for them, let's say it again, it's important, will try to be, the game player, the key player in the next election for the left in general. But they did like 3% at the previous presidential election, and they can't be sitting at the National Assembly without alliances with La France Insoumise. Why? Because today La France Insoumise is the biggest political party on the left sitting at the National Assembly. So they will. I'm 100% sure when you heard Olivier Faure, he's the head of the Socialist Party yesterday, he was naming his enemy, that is La France Insoumise, and it was just like, oh, come on, really? Like,
well, and they're going to shoot themselves in the foot, and we're going to be then left with the center right at best.
Yeah, best. Yeah, I don't even see whom. Like Edouard Philippe, do you believe?
I know, exactly. Yeah, Edouard Philippe, who listeners might remember us talking about at one point during COVID, because he was our prime minister and had a very crazy beard that was related to a medical thing, but it was like a mix of it was like a Cruella de Vil kind of beard, black and white. And he's sort of nude. He's like milk toast. He's fine. I don't even know what he really stands for. I just mean he's not a polemical figure. At least we don't know that yet.
No, I think you're right. He's not. I mean, as a prime minister, this is the kind of role that you should have, especially in a crisis like COVID-19. I don't know how it's going to be, but the thing is that the left itself is in any configuration not going to have a unique candidate. Because even though if like, I call it like the primary of losers, I'm sorry to say that, but it's like, you have Clémentine Autain, you have François Ruffin. You have the Socialist Party that didn't decide yet if they will be running for the primary of the left. You have Lucie Castet that is actually running it. I don't think she'll be, like, she's coordinating it, but I don't think she'll be running for the ticket. And then you also have Marine Tondelier. And anyway, so they're taking part of this Primaire de la Gauche, which I call the Primaire des Losers, because it's basically like lots of people that aren't reaching out that much in French politics.
No.
And I doubt that the Socialist Party at some point was saying that they will go for it. I'm really not sure. Then you have Glucksmann.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Remember? And, he's doing well in the polls. So I don't know. But I doubt that they will manage to have an alliance with the Socialist Party. So it's going to be quite complicated. And anything that happens, Jean-Luc Mélenchon will go for it in any configuration.
Which I have to say, I know I should be more neutral about this, but I can't. I think he is so toxic. And so many of the ideas of that party could reach more people if he would just get over himself and step aside. And he won't do it. And so, and to that, you follow the US political system so closely. You hosted that event the day our lives changed 2 years ago in November. Does anybody, including Mélenchon, not see the danger in this? He's clearly not putting the party and the country above his own ego. And that to me smells bad.
I agree. And I really don't like him that much. Also because when I met him, he mansplained feminism to me for like 10 minutes.
Oh, gross.
So I was like,
say no more.
No. Anyways, I talked about it with because even though I'm not a big fan, I'm a bit like you. I'm more fan of the ideas. I think it's the program they were, they worked on during the previous elections was very good. Like, I would agree on most of it. And what I usually look at particularly is women's rights, equality, etc. And I think for that sake, they were doing pretty well. But then there is a difference between, and it's often the case with this party in particular, between what they are advocating for and what they're proposing as a political program, etc., and their action.
Yeah.
I had, at the time I was working for a feminist organization, and I had a very close look up on the different political programs and who was doing the best in terms of like fighting against women, gender-based violences and all this. And France Insoumise was doing very great. After that, you have this very important member of the parliament, Adria Quatennens, that is on trial for domestic violence, that gets condemned. And then you have like half of the party that still supports him. And the head of the party, which is Jean-Luc Mélenchon, Sophia Chikirou. And this it's not acceptable. You can't be saying on the paper, we want this and this and that. And when it comes to what happens inside your party, and is actually extremely visible, because this person, Adria Quatennens, was like huge at the party.
I remember,
And having they organized the whole press strategy with him having a seat at BFM TV at night. Sophia Chikirou was behind that, and we all know it. And that's so bad. So that's one of the things that I don't really like with France Insoumise often. They talk a lot about democracy. There is no internal democracy at all, and everyone knows it.
Right.
And so for 2027, I talked about it with even though I have a lot of friends inside the party and member of the parliament, member of the European Parliament, mostly women. And I talked about it with one of the members of the European Parliament, and I was like, so who's next? Who's going to be representing the party for the next election? And I was serious. It was like a few months ago, and I was still, she looked at me and she was like, without doubt, she was like, oh, Jean-Luc. And I was like, what? I was like, you could run. I mean, Mathilde could run. So many of you could run for it. And she was like, oh, no, he's the one that has the biggest reach and people know him, etc., etc. Anyways, then I talked about it with other people in the party, and they were telling me that for 2027, we'll see how it goes, they will try to put other faces with him. Like, he will be the main face on the poster, but they will put, other famous faces. And so I don't know if this can work, but yeah, I agree with you. He's toxic.
Well, I can tell you his proximity is still a problem. He could be a face among others, but that's going to be problematic for a lot of left voters. A discussion that we're going to have until next May, of course.
Oh God, yes.
So as a concluding thought, do you think we're going to end up in a place as bad as the US, or is that just a unique form of total chaos?
I don't know. It's so hard. I really want to say no, because I'm rather a hopeful person. If not, I wouldn't do that job for sure. But if I have to be cynical, I would say nothing gives us hope right now. Like, honestly, like I look everywhere, and God, I'm trying, and I don't see hope. The only places where I see some hope in, like, it's within the civil society, grassroots organization, like very, very, very local activists and stuff like that. This is the only places. And I think if anything saves us, is the people.
Well, and that's what you're arguing in your book, right? So you have a new book that I just picked up this weekend.
Ooh, yay.
It's only in French, but you're basically asking, who does the struggle, the fight for a better life, who does that benefit? And your sort of sub-argument is that it has to be people coming together in community.
Yep.
Right? And
yeah,
so
and
I imagine your book is linked to that. You do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we saw it in 2024, like the NFP, Nouveau Front Populaire, is actually born because the left, the people of the left, as I call it, le peuple de gauche, like asked for it, begged for it, And I really hope that the parties, the left parties, will listen to us.
From your mouth to the universe's ears. Léa, thank you so much. To be continued.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to continue this discussion with you. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for the invitation.
That's the show for today. If you're listening on Spotify, be sure to check out the poll related to this episode by scrolling down in your app. There are more exciting conversations to come this season, so I hope you'll subscribe or share the show with a friend if you've been enjoying what you've heard so far. As always, you can find more from me at lindsaytremuta.com and at the New Paris Dispatch on Substack. À très bientôt.